Hi, everybody. Welcome to On the Money. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Back from the brink, a last-minute deal to stop America from falling off the fiscal cliff. Most taxes won't go up, but nobody's talking about the big one that does go up, and it affects almost everybody. And the fun and games are not over yet. The next battle facing a dysfunctional government is coming in just a few months. Why one former CEO says he feels used and America is going to hell. And a fashionable forecast. The man behind more than a dozen luxury brands tells us what's hot and what's not. On the Money starts right now.
This is America's #1 financial news program, On the Money. Now, Maria Bartiromo.
Here's a look at what's making news as we head into a new week on the Money. A crucial economic report out on Friday. The December jobs report was out. The Labor Department says that the economy created 155,000 new jobs for the month. And that was slightly below expectations. But the unemployment rate stands at 7.8%, which was actually unchanged from November because November was revised upward to 7.8% as well. Well, after a painful and protracted battle in government, President Obama signed a compromise bill avoiding the fiscal cliff. It makes the Bush-era tax cuts permanent, except for individuals with incomes over $400,000. It also extends jobless benefits for the long-term unemployed, allows the payroll tax holiday to expire, which, by the way, raises Social Security taxes by 2% for everybody. The measure increases taxes on capital gains and dividends to 20% for those making more than $400,000. Reaction from business was fierce.
It's amazing how the politicians on both sides of the aisle were talking about how the bill to address the fiscal cliff needed to be balanced, and what came out couldn't have been more imbalanced, sort of by definition, with nothing but tax increases.
We have to get something in a couple of months because all we did is push the cataclysm out a couple of months before we have to address these issues again.
Well, I'm encouraged in one sense in that at least the vast majority of American taxpayers will know what their rates will be, and there's not that much of an increase.
The markets were happy with the deal, kicking off the new year with a bang, up 300 points on Wednesday, the best day in more than a year. Then the market fell slightly on Thursday. Stocks, though, rose on Friday. Avis is about to swallow up Zipcar, the car rental service, buying the car sharing service for $500 million. Avis is trying to broaden the base and reach a younger demographic. The U.S. has avoided falling off the fiscal cliff for now, but there is much more to come. Is Washington the biggest threat to our economy these days? Joining me now is Mohamed El-Arian, CEO and co-chief investment officer of PIMCO. Mohamed, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
So let's start with the jobs numbers, Mohamed. The economy adding 155,000 jobs for the last month. The unemployment rate at 7.8%. We did see strength in the construction and manufacturing sectors. What do you think this report tells us about where we are now in the economy?
It tells us, Maria, that the economy is healing and that the labor market is healing. Not only did we create 155,000 jobs, but we also increased the purchasing power of the labor force by 4.1% year on year. And we also saw some improvement in the structural indicators. The long-term unemployed are now down to 39% of total unemployment. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's still a very gradual process. And in particular, it is vulnerable to dysfunction and polarization in Washington.
Total dysfunction, Mohamed. Let's talk about that drama over the fiscal cliff. Of course, the drama, I guess, goes away temporarily with this agreement on tax rates. But in just a few months, Congress is going to have to deal with the debt ceiling. And I'm being told, the debt ceiling, the sequester, and then a continuing resolution to fund government spending is going to be an even bigger fight. So what are you expecting in the next couple of months?
So we're expecting a very messy process. As you just pointed out, there's three things to sort out: the debt ceiling, the sequester, and the continuing resolution. And whenever there's an agreement, Maria, we look for two elements: content and momentum. Was the content sufficient? And clearly it wasn't. That's why we have another crisis coming up. But also we got no momentum. It's not as if Democrats and Republicans came out feeling good about this. They came out feeling bad about this. And therefore, there's absolutely no momentum for cooperation. So markets better have their seatbelt on because we're going to have more political drama in the next few weeks.
So how does this play out, you think? I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about that 2% tax hike that everybody is going to pay with the expiration of the payroll tax holiday. You know, we're all talking about taxes going higher on the rich, and yet this Social Security tax is going to hit everybody. What impact will this have?
So you're right. In terms of economics, the biggest impact is on the payroll tax because the marginal propensity to consume, or put another way, how much of each dollar is spent on goods and services is highest on this payroll tax. So this is a contractionary impact. The good news, Maria, is there's enough momentum in this economy to absorb this impact and grow at 1.5% to 2%. Not a great growth rate, but certainly not a recession.
Here we are talking about taxes with this most recent debt deal, but we're going to see some pretty significant spending cuts in the debt ceiling deal, right?
Yeah, so we're going to have to resolve what was left untouched, which is the spending side. And hopefully there'll be agreement on long-term and medium-term reforms on the spending side so that we can focus on other things.
What about the Federal Reserve? That was also in the news. The Fed releasing the minutes this week. There was word that a number of members of the Fed wanted to stop this bond buying program, the so-called quantitative easing, at the end of this year. I mean, here we've got spending cuts, we've got uncertainties in the economy, and the one stimulus that everyone has been really looking forward to, the Federal Reserve stimulus, is now being threatened to come to an end this year.
Yeah, so the market got worried, said, oh, wait a minute, maybe the Fed is not as committed to QE and stimulus as we thought. I think that's the wrong interpretation, Maria. What we think is more likely is that certain members on the FOMC are putting a marker down. They are reminding others, including the politicians, that there are costs and risks involved in what the Fed is doing. And they don't want the politicians to believe that the Fed can carry the whole burden for this economy.
Bottom line, Mohammed, what do you want to do in this environment if you're an investor in the market?
So it depends on your starting position. If you have already taken on a lot of risks, you've done really well, and time now to trim it back. We have economic uncertainty, we have political uncertainty, and we have a certain amount of policy uncertainty coming out of Europe. So take some chips off the table. Risk assets, which means equities, which means high yield bonds, have done extremely well. If you are conservatively positioned, stay there, because there is still value, although not great value. Prices have really been artificially elevated. And the most critical thing is keep an eye on the Fed, because the Fed is the only thing that's keeping valuations above fundamentals. If the Fed steps away, then valuations will come down.
All right, we will leave it there. Mohammed, always wonderful to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
We'll see you soon. Mohammed El-Arian joining us. Up next, we're on the money. A former bank CEO who says the fiscal cliff deal is a raw one. Why he says this country is going to hell. His quote, not mine, what he would do to fix it. And later, the French CEO who oversees some of the best dressed names around, from Gucci to McCartney to your running shoes. Francois-Henri Pinault of retail conglomerate PPR. As we take a break, take a look at how the stock market ended the week. Well, Dick Kovacevic is mad as hell and doesn't want to take it anymore. The former chairman and CEO of Wells Fargo Bank is blasting the fiscal cliff agreement, and to put it mildly, is not happy with Washington or this deficit deal. Dick joins me now with more on that. Dick, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Maria.
So many business leaders are calling this deficit deal a disaster or joke, you included. But let me ask you, isn't some kind of deal better than nothing at all?
I don't really think so, because all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. We have the debt increase coming. We have sequestration. We have the continuing resolution. We just go from one mini crisis to another. Don't solve anything. And most importantly, don't give confidence to the American public or American businesses that we are dealing with our problems in a way that's going to help grow the economy over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it feels like the economy is handcuffed and businesses are not going to spend money if they don't have the certainty. So let me ask you, because this congressional deal had few, if any, spending cuts, how is it possible that after all of this talk about raising taxes on a small number of people, not putting a dent in the debt, the $16 trillion debt, how is it possible that this Congress accepted higher taxes with no spending cuts? And what kind of spending cuts would you like to see?
It's stunning. I mean, it's inconceivable to me. We should be adopting what Simpson Bowles did, that said that for every dollar of revenue, we need $3 worth of expense cuts. I mean, it's very simple. That's the only way we get to where we need to get. There are many areas of expense reductions, but fundamentally, we have to attack entitlements. They're growing at a level that is unsustainable. And if we don't address entitlements, we are going to be in a fiscal mess forever, and we're going to have slow growth, and we're never going to get out of it.
Do people understand this? How do you educate or engage the American public to get more involved in this debate? I mean, what's the average consumer or investor missing out on, and what do they need to do?
Well, I think education is very important, and I think that's where both parties, particularly the Republicans, have done a terrible job of influencing public opinion. But you have to simplify the issue. And the way I like to talk about it is that if you take our country's fiscal situation and put it in family terms, we have a family that's earning $22,000 a year, that's spending $38,000 a year, has already on its credit card balance $143,000, and that balance is increasing at $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Now, that family will never be able to pay off that debt. So their children and grandchildren are going to have to do that. And I don't think that's what American families really want to have happen.
You know, for a little while, the regulatory environment was front and center. What can you tell us about the financial services sector? People are not sure about the financial sector, about capitalism in general. It seems like because of this fighting in Washington, it's setting the tone for the average person's mood out there and their feelings toward lawmakers as well as bankers.
No question about that. Half the rules still haven't been formulated. Most of those will have a negative impact, in my opinion, on the economy, and it just adds to the problems that we have. We still don't even know, and it's supposed to come out very soon, about how we are supposed to lend money from a mortgage standpoint. And the Consumer Protections Agency is working on that, but they've been working on it for 2 years. And we're finally seeing the housing coming back, and yet we still don't know what the rules are on based upon how we are supposed to make a mortgage.
So what did you mean specifically when you said America is going to hell?
Well, just what we've been talking about. It's totally dysfunctional. We have an economy that, in my opinion, that can be growing at 50 to 75% faster than we are. We can have lower unemployment. It's not the economy, it's not macro environment. It's our own politicians in Washington that are causing our economy to be slow and our unemployment to be high. That's the country's going to hell when that occurs. 535 people are causing, 240 million people to suffer economically. That's just not right.
Amazing. Dick, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We'll see you soon. Dick Kovacevic joining us. Up next, we're on the money. What the Duchess of Cambridge, the daughter of a Beatle, and a 29-year-old fashion phenom have in common. 3 letters that make up one of the fashion world's biggest powerhouses. PPR CEO on the luxury consumer. And look for us on Facebook /Maria Bartiromo. From high tops to haute couture, French conglomerate PPR blankets the retail industry with a stable of nearly 20 luxury and lifestyle brands, like Kate Middleton favorite Alexander McQueen, Gucci and Stella McCartney, and athletic retailer Puma. CEO Francois-Henri Pinault, husband to actress Salma Hayek, oversees the $22 billion company founded by his father. His goal, to turn the holding company into a fashion and sports powerhouse, finding its way into consumer closets the world over. You have restructured the company. You have an emphasis, obviously, on the luxury brands, as well as on sports, on Puma.
We've been transforming the group from a financial conglomerate, where we were like 3 years ago, into a very specialized company dealing in the ready-to-wear and accessory business. I looked at what was the last 50 years in terms of growth. It was made by 800 million people, Americans, Japanese, Western Americans, Western Europeans. The next 50 years, we are adding 3 billion new consumers, China, India, Brazil, let's add Indonesia to that, for instance. The growth that will come in front of us in the next 50 years have nothing to do with what has been achieved in the last 50 years. The only difference is that it will be done in those new markets, one, and the specificity of those markets, young people loving brands, loving sports, and becoming rich much sooner compared with what we've been enjoying in the other market, which will be enjoying a very strong growth in the next 10, even 20 years.
These are mega trends, and also in that mega trend is the fact that women are outnumbering men, women of color, Asians, Latin Americans, and you're looking at young people as well as women really driving business.
When it comes to luxury brands, when it comes to ready-to-wear accessories, it's a very much driven by women buying, of course, and when it comes to sports, 15 to 25 years old customers, very, very numerous in those countries. So at PPR, we really have all the brands to deal with those customers. I think we're ready for a very, very nice adventure in the future.
You announced a joint venture with Yoox to boost the online selling. How important is technology, given the fact that such an important customer is this young person who is savvy with technology?
For me, being online, it's part of the reality of every brand inside PPR. We need to have a perfect e-commerce activity to make sure that the basic e-commerce functions are at the right level. But this is not enough to differentiate yourself from the other mainstream brands. So the next step will be even more important.
Fashion designer Alexander Wang, named creative director of brand Balenciaga recently. This is a 100-year-old high-end fashion house. Does appointing a young American designer as the head mean your stable of brands is shifting?
No, the brand is not shifting. The designer is shifting. And Alexander Wang, which is amazing with this young guy, is so talented, and he did such a wonderful job in building his own brand here in America, Alexander Wang, and it's an international brand now. Now that he wants to express his talent also in another dimension, which is a very high luxury brand named Balenciaga.
When you're at a fashion show, what is going through your mind in terms of, what's on the runway? Do you see beautiful clothing? Do you see, is that the nuts and bolts of the business?
The fashion show is a very important moment. It's only 15 minutes, but it's a concentration of a theme of the season, technical skills, new materials, new colors, sometimes new design for the brand. Everything is put together in a very harmonious vision bring by the designer. And you need to understand that to make sure that what will be hitting the stores afterwards is consistent with that vision.
I'm glad we touched on technology, because I meant to say you were an intern at Hewlett-Packard early in your career, right?
Yeah, you know that.
That's wonderful. So does that give you sort of an underpinning of how important technology is to the business, or this is just such a long time ago?
I'm passionate about technology. I love programming, I love new technologies, and I'm continuing investing in new technology. So yeah, it's not only about our businesses, it's also about it's happening in the world, yeah.
We will be watching, and we hope you'll come back soon.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Maria.
you so much, Francois Henri, joining us. Up next, a look at the news this week that will have an impact on your money, and then cash only at the Holy See, why electronic transactions in Vatican City are having a crisis of faith. For more on our show and our guests, check out the website otm.cnbc.com. And I hope you'll follow me on Twitter and on Google+. Look for @Maria Bartiromo. First, though, take a look at the stories coming up in the week ahead that may move the markets and impact your money this upcoming week. Earnings are out for the fourth quarter. The earnings period kicks off on Tuesday when we hear from Alcoa, Monsanto, and Wells Fargo, among others. Also on Tuesday, we get the latest and greatest in technology with the Consumer Electronics Show that begins in Las Vegas. On Thursday, the European Central Bank's Governing Council will hold its first meeting of 2013. And on Friday, we'll learn if the U.S. is importing or exporting more goods with the report of the International Trade Balance. And finally today, purchases near the Pontiff are cash only. Starting New Year's Day, the Vatican began declining electronic transactions like credit cards and debit card payments within the walls of the Holy See. The freeze follows a decision by the Italian Central Bank that the Papal State does not comply with international regulations regarding money laundering. Vatican press officials promise that the interruption will be brief, but in the meantime, visitors to the tiny Catholic city-state should bring plenty of cash. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, join me. What's the buzz on BuzzFeed? How social media is changing the way we get the news. Each week, keep it right here where we are on the money. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you again next weekend.